Good evening. I'm honored that I get to come out here tonight and introduce our featured speaker. You've heard from some amazing student athletes, and you're about to hear from another one. Born and raised in Knoxville, though we won't hold that against him, Chad Pennington was a multi-sport athlete, and it's amazing as I've talked to some of you that you don't know Chad's story. He was a multi-sport athlete, but eventually football became his passion. And he attended the Webb School of Knoxville, though his dad was a football coach at another high school, which we need to talk about. We need to hear about that. After starting there, he received an offer to play football at his parents' alma mater, Marshall University. There he teamed with future Hall of Famer Randy Moss to lead Marshall football to heights they had never been to before. For his career, he threw 115 touchdown passes, passed for nearly 14,000 yards, led the school to its first ever bowl win, and finished fifth in the Heisman Trophy voting in 1999. After college, he was drafted by the New York Jets in the first round of the 2000 NFL Draft. He quickly became successful, leading that team to a division championship early in his career. But while in New York, he also suffered a significant shoulder injury. In all, he played 89 games over 8 seasons with the Jets. And in 2008, he signed a free agent contract with the Miami Dolphins and immediately led them to a division championship as well. He played 3 seasons for the Dolphins before injuries led to his retirement in 2011. He is the only player ever to win the AP Comeback NFL Player of the Year award twice, in 06 and 08. He finished second only to Peyton Manning in the 2008 NFL MVP voting. And he finished his career as the NFL's all-time leader in completion percentage, although he has since been surpassed by only Drew Brees. But most importantly, and this is key, Chad, through it all, is a strong believer and a faithful servant of Jesus Christ. He has stated that his trials and hurdles in football helped make him a stronger believer, and we are so very blessed to have him with us tonight. He and his wife, Robin, now reside in the Lexington area with their 3 sons. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the stage Mr. Chad Pennington.
Thank you, Terry, and Keith, thank you. Appreciate our conversation over the last couple of weeks, and just want to let you know that it's a privilege and honor to be here tonight to be able to share with you. Share some of my experiences with you. I respect every one of you as student athletes in this room, and the reason that I do is because I've been sitting in your chair, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, all these questions in front of you, some of them behind you. I get it. I understand, and I respect it because we all have stories and we all have things that we're dealing with, challenges in our lives, some tougher than others, and I certainly understand all of those things. And I have teammates, former teammates of mine and friends that have similar stories that I have been able to draw inspiration from as well. And so I just want you to know it's really a privilege for me to share with you. And as I was kind of thinking about what to share with you, and what to talk about, I kind of tried to put myself back in your shoes when I was 15, 16 years old at the Webb School of Knoxville and just trying to figure this thing out, either athletically, academically, socially, with my family. And what would it be that I would want to know? What would it be if I could look back now? If you're a fan of country music, Brad Paisley has this song called "Letter to Me," where he's writing a letter to his former self when he was younger. And that's kind of where I put myself to try to think about what I could share with you that would kind of make sense. And so it's kind of funny, and not funny, and it's not ironic either. It's just the way that the Lord works is that some of the things that were coming to mind were the same things that Becca, Tyler, and Grace were sharing with you when it came to leadership and service and things like that. And so those are some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. But I think it's best for me to start off just to kind of give you a little background of me and my family and where we've been. And so like Terry said, I was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. A son of 2 educators. Both my parents were school teachers. My mom taught high school English for 37 years. My dad was a football coach and PE teacher for 30 years. And so the term student athlete has always been near and dear to my heart because as I was growing up, you were my heroes. Being able to ride on the Friday night bus going to a high school football game. My heroes weren't Joe Montana or Troy Aikman or anyone that played at the University of Tennessee, my heroes were you. Because as a fourth grader, as a ball boy on the football team, I looked up to you. Because I could talk to you, I could touch you, I could see you were tangible to me. And I think it's very important for all of us to realize as young student athletes that we have someone else looking up to us. And so growing up as a youngster in Knoxville, Tennessee, you were my heroes. And so my childhood was probably similar to some of you in the room, maybe not similar to some of you at all. But being the son of two educators, I grew up in the school system and on the football field and in the drama classroom. And fortunately, to answer Terry's question, my dad coached and taught in the public school, and in 8th grade we made a decision for me to stay back a year in 8th grade so I didn't graduate at 17, and I was immature and a late bloomer, so to speak, and so we decided to move. We stayed in North Knoxville, but we decided to move schools over in West Knoxville and go to school at Webb School of Knoxville. And so I was there for 5 years and had an amazing experience and really had a great private education, made some great friends and coaches and teachers that were unbelievable to me. And really in high school, I wasn't the greatest of athletes. As a matter of fact, basketball was my first love. I loved the game of basketball, and with my dad being a PE teacher, I was a gym rat. I loved staying in the gym. There's nothing sweeter than the sound of the ball going through the hoop when you're by yourself in the gymnasium. And so that was kind of my first love. And then, but as things kind of got going in high school, and it was really, a dream of mine and a goal of mine was to play college athletics at some form or fashion. Didn't know what that looked like really. But as we got closer to my senior year, we could see that football was kind of turning out to be the sport that could probably give me the best opportunity to play at the highest level I could possibly play. And so we chose to take a scholarship at Marshall University. And like Terry said, the next 5 years of my life were an unbelievable experience too, to be able to play with such great players as Randy Moss and have great teammates like Byron Leftwich and be part of teams that were 50 and 4 in 4 years. And we were kind of that BCS buster, so to speak, before the TCUs and the Boise States and those types of teams came around that you may be more familiar with. Marshall was that team, and that experience was amazing as well. My life and walk in faith kind of started happening around 3rd grade. I was very fortunate to grow up with two parents who strongly believe in the Lord and their walk with Him, and they were great examples for me. And so in 3rd grade, I decided to accept Him as my Lord and Savior. But really and truly, things really didn't turn out or really come to fruition for me until I was actually a professional athlete. And so after I was drafted by the New York Jets in 2000, and here I am going from Knoxville, Tennessee and Huntington, West Virginia to the Big Apple. And as you can imagine, it's quite the change. Toto's not in Kansas anymore. It's a completely different experience. And the first thing you learn in the Big Apple is what road rage is all about because New Yorkers rubbing's racing up there. So when you get on the 495 and the Long Island Expressway, you know what that's all about. And so the first 7-8 years of my career was similar to high school and college, where my whole focus and thought process was on athletics and academics and trying to achieve and compete. And I was trying to learn what that was all about. And that was my whole thought process. And my walk of faith and my life with the Lord was just kind of a category. It was just kind of sitting over here. And I would take care of it every once in a while, but it really wasn't a part of who I was on a daily basis. And so until in 2007, when everything's going really well, we've been to the playoffs 3 times, and for the first time in my life, I was benched. For the first time in my life, the game that I loved and had such passion for was taken away. And I was no longer the starter for the New York Jets. I was no longer the quarterback. I was no longer the person and the man that my teammates were looking for leadership and to step in the huddle and help them win. Very difficult process for me. And you may have faced this already as a young student athlete. And so for me, this happened later on. And I remember calling my dad and kind of wanting a little bit of pick-me-up and trying to ask him for advice on how do I handle this. I'm now the backup. I'm trying to figure things out, where this is going to lead to. Is my career going to end after this year? What does all this look like? And he just kept telling me, he said, son, you know, you've experienced some success and some things have went your way, but I just keep praying that the Lord keeps burning you. I'm like, burning me? Well, thanks, Dad. I promise you I'll call you back for a little bit of pick-me-up advice next time, because you're really helping me out there. But what he was trying to say was, he was trying to say that this is an experience outside of your professional life that you need to go through to understand who you really are and understand what you're really here for. And so what I came to realize is that this game that I loved and had so much passion for, as far as the game of football, it was actually becoming my God. And that was a problem, because everything that was happening on the football field, the result that was happening on the football field, I would take that home with me. And so if the result was good on the football field, then how I treated my family, how I treated my boys, my relationships with my teammates and friends, it was good. But when the result wasn't what I wanted on the football field, because the game of football was my God, then when that wasn't there, then all of a sudden I wasn't treating my wife the way I should be treating her. I wasn't having the right attitude around my children. I wasn't having the right attitude around my family or my friends. And so that 8-week period where I was benched and had to sit back and take a look at myself and see life from a different perspective, what I was able to learn was that the game of football and what I did on the football field could only be what I did. It couldn't be who I was. And I think that's a very important lesson that I think we all need to understand, because as you can see in our society, sports is held at a real high level. And the way that we view athletes is very important to us. But what happens is, as athletes, when we start to chase these goals as student athletes and really focus in on what we want to get accomplished, who we really are starts to mesh into who we are as an athlete and what we're doing on the basketball court or the soccer field or whatever that may be. And so that's something important that I think I wanted to share with you, is to really check yourself and really look at who you are versus what you do, and make sure those two things are completely separate. Okay? Now, secondly, what I wanted to speak to you about after just sharing that little story with you would just be what it's like to be a student athlete and what it's like to be a Christian student athlete and what that means. I have a soft place in my heart for a student athlete, because to me, it's the perfect combination, because it's such a great position for all of you to be in, to where you're learning how to manage your time. You're learning how to be accountable, not only to yourself, but to each other. You're learning responsibility. You're learning all these great life lessons as a student athlete. And what's even more important is that's why there's two words in that phrase, student athlete. You're a student and you're an athlete. Students can only do what they can do in the classroom. Athletes can only do what they do in the athletic arena. But a student athlete, that's special, because you have an opportunity and you've shown that you compete in the classroom and you compete in the athletic arena. And that's very, very hard to do. Very hard to do. It's a challenge, and we take that for granted sometimes. And what I would encourage you with is understand that the importance of being a student athlete is a big responsibility. And they can't be separated. In my household, when I grew up, academics were 50% of my life, athletics were 50% of my life. But when I was in one of those arenas, it was 100%. I was all in, all effort. And so if I had a practice that went all the way to 8:30 at night, that didn't mean I could just let the test slide the next morning. Or if I had a test the next morning, that didn't mean that I could let practice slide either. They went hand in hand. And what I was learning in the athletic arena, I could apply to the academic classroom. What I was learning in the academic classroom, I could apply in the athletic arena. Now, there's another thing to that. Being a Christian, being a Christ follower, what does that look like? And we just heard one of our student athletes talk about it. Can we be competitive? Can we have that zeal and that desire and that competition within us and still be a Christ follower? Let me read you a little bit of this Bible verse, but it's also a couple of verses that I came across. And you've probably heard this one verse, but I wanted to share with you the whole entire thing. And I think this will kind of put it in perspective when we're talking about being a student athlete and a Christ follower at the same time, and what it means to compete. So this comes from the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Now the verse that we probably all know would be 1 Corinthians 9 chapter 24, where it says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." And sometimes what we do with Scripture, sometimes we kind of take one little piece, then we try to apply it. But sometimes it's nice to kind of look at the full context and look at some verses behind that or in front of it to see what the writer's trying to say. And so if you look at this from verses 24 all the way through 27, Paul's actually talking about his own need. The Apostle Paul is actually talking about his own need for self-discipline. Now, is that something that rings true as an athlete? Learning how to be disciplined, being disciplined to what you're trying to learn in your sport or your position. Is also being disciplined in the classroom as well, correct? And so what Apostle Paul is talking about, he says, after he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." Then he goes on to say, "Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize." So what he's talking about there in his spiritual life, and I know I need to do a much better job of this, is to be just as disciplined in the spiritual life as we are in our athletic lives, in our academic lives. It all goes hand in hand. And that's what's great about being a student athlete, is that if you really want to know what, in my opinion, it's going to take for all of us in here to be successful, it's really simple. And you're probably going to say, "Chad, that's not really profound what you're getting ready to say," but once I say it and bring it around, you understand. It's about being your best. Now you may say, "Well, I've heard that from the Army, be your best." What does that mean? What it means is that in every aspect of your life, it's about being your best. Okay? So in your favorite part of your life, whether it be say it's in the athletic arena, that's kind of easy, right? Sometimes I can put forth the effort that I need to put forth as far as being my best. Or maybe it's academically. Can I put forth the effort to be my best? But what about socially? What does that look like? Being your best socially. What about spiritually? What does that look like? Being your best spiritually. How about at home? Being the best brother, the best sister. What does that look like? And so if we allow one part of our lives to slip in that area as far as being all in and giving the effort that we need to be successful, what's going to happen in the most favorite part of our life? So if we allow, let's say we allow academically, you know what, I'm going to leave that test alone. I'm not going to study as hard. I think I got it. What's going to happen when you're on the free throw line with 2 seconds left? Do you think you're going to lose a little bit of mental focus? What's going to happen if you're on the 2-yard line, as the phrase said? What's going to happen when you've got the penalty kick and you need that mental toughness and that mental fortitude? It's all related. And if you're going to allow something to slip in one side of your life, I promise you it's going to rear its ugly head in the part that you really enjoy doing, whether that be in the athletic arena or whatever. It could happen socially, where you let it slip and you're with your buddies and you let each other just make that one small mistake that you know you shouldn't make, but you do it anyway. That's why it's all related. That's why it's all related. Now, before I continue on, I want you to understand that there's one rule, and we always had this with the Jets or with the Dolphins, because I know all of you guys are coming from practice, you're tired or whatever. If you're a little sleepy and you feel yourself nod, stand up. Okay? Just go ahead and stand up. Not going to hurt my feelings at all. As a matter of fact, attaboy, there you go. It's okay. And here's why it's okay. You're acknowledging that, you know what? I'm really trying to listen here, but I'm tired. And I'm nodding off. So that's okay, all right? But what's not okay is to just let yourself go. That's a form of self-discipline, right? And so if that's happening to you, go ahead. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all. Stand up, stretch, do whatever you need to do. At least you're making the effort to stay engaged. So finally, I'd like to just share with you, before we open it up to question and answers, I was thinking about, okay, what could I share with them that if I was your age right now, or as I look back to when I was 15 or 16 years old, what would I want to know? What would be something that I want to know? And it's funny, as I was listening to our 3 student athletes talk about some of the things with their experiences, 2 things really came to mind. One of those which I was going to talk about, and the other one which I have talked about before but hadn't planned on it tonight, but I think it's important. And here's the 2 things that I would share with you. Relationships and leadership. And what does that look like? Relationships. No matter what season of life that you're in, okay, your life will always be filled with relationships. At some point in time, as a student athlete, your academic career will be over and your athletic career will be over at some point in time. For me, I was the fortunate one. I was able to play 11 years in the NFL despite 4 shoulder surgeries, and so the ball stopped spinning for me at the age of 34. But if you looked at the statistics, and I'm supposed to live, let's say, close to 80, I've got another 40 years of my life to live. What does that look like? What's going to happen? And the one thing that always stays constant, and one thing that will always remain important to you, even now as young student athletes, and even as you get older and you progress and you start raising families and start having little ones yourself, or you start pursuing a professional career, it will be those relationships. And they are so important. It's not going to be the touchdown that you may have scored, or the game-winning goal that you may have kicked, or the dunk that you had. It's going to be those important relationships that you had with your teammates and those bonds that you've built and being able to maintain those. And then those relationships turn into relationships you may have in college. And then they turn into relationships that you have with your immediate family and then the family that you're trying to raise and how all that works. And sometimes it gets so complicated. And as human beings, we make mistakes. And the one thing we mess up and forget about are the relationships, because they're so important to us. That's how God made us. He made us that way, to want to be in relationships with each other, to enjoy each other's company. And so I would really strongly encourage you to look at your relationships in your life and really take a look at those and see what they mean to you, how you can keep them strong, how you can help each other build stronger relationships, and what that looks like. I think that there's one Bible verse that comes to mind here when I think about relationships, and it's Ephesians 4:29. And it's been on my heart for the last summer, because I think in your world today, our speech and how we speak to each other is so out of whack. We feel like that roasting each other and putting each other down and telling a joke that is way off course. Well, I'm just joking. And we don't understand how our words really affect another person. And if you look at the Bible verse, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, the Apostle Paul says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, except for that which is helpful to others according to their needs, so that it may benefit those who listen." And if we really focused on that and looked at what that meant, first of all, what does unwholesome talk mean? Think about that. In your world, what does that mean? Then you look at, okay, what's unwholesome talk mean? Now look at, okay, how when I speak, am I encouraging others? Or am I discouraging others? And if I'm discouraging others, why? What's the point? What's the point of discouraging someone? What's the point of putting someone else down? And then we have to then look at, and this is why I brought up my experience as a youngster looking up to you as high school student athletes. People are always listening. Always listening. So do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but also encourage others according to their needs. And finally, the last part of that says what? So that it may benefit those who listen. So you have a third party here that's actually listening to how you are encouraging someone else or how you are treating someone else. And it may be a little guy, it may be an adult. You never know who's watching you. You never know who's listening to you. You never know who's... And the greatest thing about that is, sometimes we think that we have to go present the gospel to someone and we need to go share our faith and just put it on someone. Some of the greatest times to do that is when you're just living your life by certain actions, and it causes someone else to be curious, to be like, you know what? What's up with that dude? I want to know what's up with that gal. Why does she act the way that she does? Why does she treat people the way that she does? Why does he do some of the things that he does? And then when they ask you, then right there, the Lord has given you the end to share your story. To share, this is why I do the things that I do. That's where you have a chance to present the gospel to somebody. Because remember, there's going to be a lot of people in your lives that have never even cracked open a Bible. Never even looked at a piece of Scripture. But they could read the Bible and read the Scripture by watching you and watching your life and reading your life. And how you're treating people and how you're going about your daily business. And so managing those relationships with your words and your actions are really, really important. I'd also like to touch with you a little bit about leadership. We heard our people talk a little bit about leadership and what that looks like. And I've kind of been on a professional journey myself about what does leadership mean and am I capable of leading? And so being a quarterback, obviously you're put into that natural leadership role. And sometimes you're not ready for it. You don't even know what it even looks like or what it means. And you've heard that term leadership or being a leader or lead probably thrown around in your own life, and you're trying to figure that out. And what does that mean? For me and what my life experiences have shown me, I was very fortunate. Does anybody know who Bill Russell is? Anybody? Maybe one, two people? Well, for you young bucks and those out there that don't know who Bill Russell is, if anybody knows what winning is about and championships, it would be Bill Russell. Okay, so he played for the Boston Celtics. He won 11 NBA titles as a player and then won 2 as a coach. And so I was very fortunate in 2003 to listen to Bill Russell speak. He was in New York City at the time, and he was presenting the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year to Tim Duncan and David Robinson. I'm sure you've heard of those. Those are a little bit later, past Bill Russell. And so he started to talk about his Boston Celtic teams and why they were so successful. And he was talking about how he and his teammates, they were fans of each other. They not only rooted for each other on the court, but they took care of one another off the court. And that they hung out to each other. They tried to help each other make good decisions. And he said, we were able to lead each other, and most importantly, we were able to serve each other. And he said, and that's what leadership is about. And right then and there, a light bulb went off in my head. Because sometimes I think that we get in our mind that, you know what, if we don't have a certain amount of money, or if we don't have a certain title behind our name, or if we don't have a bunch of initials after our name, what we've accomplished in school or whatever, that we don't have the ability to lead. And I would disagree, because to me, leadership is about 2 words. First of all, you have to produce, right? No one's going to follow someone that can't produce, that can't help the team win or produce in whatever arena it is. So you've got to be able to produce. You've got to be good at what you're doing. But secondly, to complete that circle, you have to be able to serve. And what was amazing is if you listen to Becca talk about her experience in cross country and what she was able to do with what? The 6th grade team. What was she doing with the 6th grade cross country team? She was serving. And so when we look at leadership, and you look at the greatest servant leader in the history of this planet, that would be Christ himself. He was a servant leader. He said, for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life ransom for many. And so when we look at that, that's what we were created as human beings, to serve each other. And so if we're created to serve and have the ability to serve, then we don't have an excuse on why we can't be a leader. Because that's what leadership is all about. It's about service. And we all have that ability. And so finally, I will leave you with this, because in your world that was different from mine, being a young high school student athlete, we didn't have social media. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was none of that. And probably for me, it was probably a good thing, because sometimes I look at what you deal with on a daily basis as young men and young women, and it's a lot. And you're exposed to a whole lot more in a whole different world than I was ever exposed to at 14, 15 years old. And for us as parents now, I have an 8th grader, 6th grader, and 3rd grader. I'm scared. I'm scared for you because of what I see as a 41-year-old man and knowing what my mind was and where I was at 16, yeah, I thought I knew it all, and I thought I had it all together. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, look at all the lessons that I've been able to learn. And so what I would share with you on that front, and I think it's important because this social media thing is obviously, it's what we do now and who we are, unfortunately. But what I would share with you is that when you listen and when you watch and when you talk about social media, what's it always talking about? Personal branding. Have you heard that? What's your brand? Who are you? Let them know who you are. Yada, yada, right? It's about this personal branding stuff. Here's your personal brand, okay? Personal brand is two things: how hard you work and how you treat people. Period. It's not about how many followers you have on Twitter. It's not about how many friends you have on Facebook, how many likes you have on Instagram. It's not about that. Because most of those followers, those likes, those friends, if you think about it, how many of those are really in your true inner circle? How many of those people that if you were down and out and you needed someone to turn to, how many of those on your social media accounts could you truly turn to? How many? Probably could count them on one hand, right? And so your personal brand and how you're going to be hired, how you're going to be known, how you're going to be respected, it's going to be about how you treat people and how hard you work. And if you do those two things and you take care of those, you'll be just fine. And I'm not saying social media is a bad thing. It can be used, technology is a great tool to use when it's used in the right manner. But like so many other things in our lives, we tend to what? Become addicted and abuse them. And so I just want to make sure that I express that to you, being on this side, looking back, and knowing all the things that you're exposed to now. Understand what your true personal brand is. I'm getting ready to go to Orlando tomorrow, and I work as an NFL transition coach where we work with men that are transitioning away from the game of football. Okay, and it's a very difficult process for them. It was a difficult process for me. I'm still going through transition because you're playing this game that you love your whole life, and then all of a sudden the lights go out and it's gone. And so now you're trying to redefine yourself and find out who you really are and what your life looks like and what your goals are, because you've had this structured life for so long. You've been able to play this game that you love, and now it's taken away from you. And there is no men's league to go play football. And so that's one of the things that we talk about, personal branding and what all this looks like. But it always comes down to two things. It comes down to relationships and leadership and what those two things look like. And so I just want to encourage you on your journey that you're doing great. There's people, youngsters, and elderly and older people that look up to you and that are watching. And so every move you make, everything you say, everything you do, people are they're trying to see what you're about. And remember, someone that may have never cracked open a Bible, but they could read Scripture by watching you and reading your life. And so I just want to encourage you to stay steady, stay on that road, and keep doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you. Stay right there.
Awesome words, no doubt. He's got it under control and has it in the proper perspective. I put a quote on the paper there, if you've got one in front of you. Winning isn't everything, but it beats anything that comes in second. And it's about Paul Bear Bryant. Most people think of him as the greatest college football coach that there is. And the statement itself is true. You could say that's a true statement, but it's an incomplete statement, and it's an inaccurate statement in the fact that it doesn't put things in the proper perspective. This man puts things in the proper perspective. He was also transparent, saying, I didn't always put it in the proper perspective. And our whole purpose of LCA is to help you figure it out sooner than you later. I didn't put it together at the right time. You know, raise your hand if you would think we've had more injuries this year than any other year in the history of our school. I mean, it just seems like that. It got me thinking a couple of weeks ago, the two most significant injuries that I suffered growing up was My summer before my 9th grade year, I broke my wrist the very first day of basketball camp. It was a Sunday through Friday at Simon Kenton High School. The year before that, the summer before that, I had been named Camper of the Week along with another player, so it was co-campers of the week. The other player that was co-camper of the week was my twin brother, so I was all right with that. But I had looked forward to that camp all along. And the weeks and days leading up to it, all I could think about is, how am I going to outdo what I did last year? My whole focus was wrong going into that week. Sunday afternoon, first game, 5-on-5, I'm back. I lunge forward playing defense for a full court pass, or really a 3-quarter pass. I jab my wrist and deflect the ball out of bounds, and I snap my wrist. The rest of the week, I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to be as the camper of the week that God put that in perspective real quick. And it was my first exposure to being a coach. Because the rest of the week, I went to camp every day, worked on the things I could work on with my right hand, and was really the coach's assistant coach the whole week. The second most significant injury that I had was a junior in high school. And in the 10th region, Pendleton County, we always had Mason County in the basketball season. We played in baseball as well. And there was a pretty famous basketball player that played in Mason County. His name was Darren Feldhouse. He also had a teammate, a point guard, who I was charged with guarding, Jerry Butler, who played at Campbellsville. Jerry was fast as lightning, and Darren 6'8". My twin brother, who's 1 inch taller than me, had to guard Darren playing the basketball court. You can see we didn't have a whole lot of success on the basketball court against Mason County. But we were getting ready to play in a baseball game, and it was early in the game, second or third inning. I get on base, I'm at first base. Coach gives me a steal sign, and I'm thinking, as I'm stealing the base, I hope Jerry thinks I'm fast. My whole focus is on Jerry and Darren and what they think, and not on what God thinks or just doing my job of stealing base. So I slide into second base late, and what I had was a sprained ankle, but in this day and time it would be called a high sprain. It's one of those that you're out for 3 to 4 weeks, and it doesn't really get back to being better for 2 months, probably at the earliest. That was it. Yeah. My focus had been displaced. So again, you athletes here, whether you play volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, archery, put your focus on Christ. Let that be the only focus you have. And we'll do some Q&A with Chad. And I think this is important. You played in the AFC East, both for the New York Jets and for the Miami Dolphins. Weather was an issue, right? Mm-hmm. What did you learn, or what character did you learn about being in those environments, weather-wise?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think you try to pride yourself on being able to play in any type of circumstance. And that's that mental toughness that comes about, that we learn as an athlete, on how to be mentally tough. And understanding that in every athletic event, it's never going to be perfect. Every perfect play that you draw up on the chalkboard never works out that way, right? There's always some little minor adjustment. There's always something that happens. But what truly needs to happen is taking ownership in what you're doing. And once you take ownership in it, there's no excuses. You just find a way to get it done. You can't come off the field and say, well, Coach, I missed the pass because the ball was slick. That's just not an excuse. Or, Coach, I missed the pass because it's windy. We're all dealing with wind. We're all dealing with the elements. We're all dealing with the same things. Some of us more than others with injuries or whatever. And so instead of trying to find a reason on why not to succeed, you find ways on how I can succeed in these weather conditions. And some of my most successful games, one of my most memorable games and most successful games was in Kansas City when it was -12. And the field was so frozen that I didn't wear cleats. I wore basketball shoes because you could stand up with cleats. And we scored 38 points that game and had a great game as a Dolphin. So I think it's your mindset, it's your mental toughness, how you prepare yourself for each athletic event, and take everything into consideration. Okay, what could be one of the things that could cause us to fail here, and then you make sure you focus on that and do what you need to do to keep it from failing.
Our football players are getting ready to enter that cold season. You cross country runners, you're getting ready to transition. It's been a super warm fall. You're getting ready to enter the cold season. How are you going to do and perform? Baseball, softball. When you start out in the spring, it's frigid. What are you going to do? Have the character to overcome. Second question I have, and I'll walk down there and let you ask questions for a little bit, is your high school experience. What could not be matched about your high school experience from a Saturday NCAA game or a Sunday NFL game or a Monday night game? What was it about your high school that you said it's the greatest of all those three levels?
Well, being a football player, I've played on all three levels. I've played on Friday night, I've played on Saturday, and I played on Sunday. And to me, there's nothing better than Friday night football. It just didn't get any better for me as a football player. The popcorn popping, the band playing, you playing in front of your classmates. It's just the game right now, and I know it's changing a little bit for you as high school athletes though. It's still pure. There's no business involved in it. It's still about the game, and it's still about your brothers or your sisters on the team. That's what it's about. And that's what you miss the most. That's what, when you leave the game, you miss the relationships. You miss the locker room. You miss the times together. It's not the plays. It's not the wins. It's not the losses. It's those relationships and those times together where you've accomplished something together or you've went through a challenge together and you've pulled each other through it. That's what, when I look back on it, there's nothing like Friday night football for me.
All right, Coach, I got the mic. We want some questions from you all. Parents?
Please give questions. You got to understand, I lived in New York for 8 years, and so dealing with the New York media, I think I can handle quite a bit. So, yeah, I can handle Mike and Mike. I can handle Mad Dog. We can handle all of them. Yeah.
Yes, Isaiah. Isaiah from WFAN.
How big are you?
What did you ask me? How big am I? I think at the combine I was like 10 and a quarter or 10 and a half, something like that. So.
All right. What's your name, son?
Matthew Johnson. Who's the biggest trash talker in the league?
Biggest trash talker.
Biggest trash talker that I played against? Oh, wow. One really good thing that I had going for me as an athlete, before I answer your question, and it doesn't serve me well at all with my wife, but I had the unique ability to cut that off and like here. Anybody ever seen For Love of the Game? And when Kevin Costner's on the mound, he says, "Clear the mechanism," and it just goes completely silent. And the Yankee fans over here, I had that unique ability, so sometimes I didn't even pay attention to it. Rodney Harrison was a pretty good trash talker. That's probably why he's pretty good on television as well. Ray Lewis wasn't much of a trash talker. He was more focused in on what he was doing. He was really fun to play against because he was like playing against another quarterback, really. Normally it's the DBs, the Sam Madisons of the world, the Ed Reeds. Ed Reed made me look silly. But, yeah, so it's kind of those type guys that ends up being your biggest trash talkers.
Your questions. Come on, you know who's out there.
But I will say this about trash talking. If you're not a trash talker, then the true trash talker, it doesn't do anything for him because he knows he's not going to get a response. So it doesn't matter. So for me, I didn't experience a lot of it. You know, say like you get a Josh Norman and an Odell Beckham. Well, that's what they do. So that's why it's like, you know, put two fires together. It's a bonfire. But for me, because they knew they weren't going to get much of a response, it really didn't do them any good to talk a lot of trash.
Did you play against Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, did I play against Brett Favre? I not only played against.
Brett Favre's interesting.
Yeah, I not only played against Brett Favre, I was fired for Brett Favre to come in as well. Okay, so yeah, so yeah, she walked right into that one. So yes, I did. Played against him when he was a Packer. Played against him twice, and we beat him twice. And then when he became a Jet and I became a Dolphin, then we split 1-1. So, yeah.
The question was, is he what benched you or no?
No, so they released me so they could bring Brett Favre in. So middle of training camp, 2 weeks into training camp, and this was after, and this was, I'm glad you asked the question because, I went through the experience in 2007 where I was benched, and the great thing in that experience was where my walk with Christ was kind of a category, and football was my God. It got flipped to where my walk with Christ and understanding what I really need to be doing was my whole life. And football, actually, the game of football was burned out of me. But it was a good thing because now it was placed in its proper perspective. And I actually had more fun with it. I enjoyed it more because it didn't run every emotion and action and reaction that I had. And so after that experience in 2007, I come back in 2008 and I have to compete for my job again. I'd competed for my job after being the starter for 3 or 4 years in New York. We had a coaching change and I was coming off my second shoulder surgery in 2006. I had to compete for my job. I won the starting job, had it for 2 years, lost it in 2007, had to come back in 2008 and compete for it again. And after 16 practices, I was winning 14-2 with my competition. And that's when they decided to make the change. So in the middle of training camp, I'm cut, unemployed, over, done. They bring Brett Favre in. And so there I'm sitting in New York like, what's going to happen? Am I going to play anymore? Whatever. Luckily, I was able to sign with the Dolphins 3 days later. And with that team, they were 1-15 the year before. They had won 1 game. And Bill Parcells comes in 2008. I'm cut, I'm released, I'm on the waiver wire. He calls me and said, hey, we'd love for you to come down. We've got a young quarterback we just drafted from Michigan and Chad Pennington. We want you to come down, be our starter, and really show him the ropes. And so I knew Bill. He drafted me in New York. My coordinator as a rookie was the coordinator in Miami, so I knew him. I was familiar with him. But it's still a 1-15 team. And, a lot of people are looking at me like, what are you doing? What are you going to a 1-15 team? But it just the situation felt right. The opportunity felt right. And I get down there and I could see we had some talent. We were really, really young. I was one of only 5 guys that was over the age of 30. And so, but we were able to make NFL history. We went from 1-15. We were 11-5. We won the division and made the playoffs. And so, and beat Brett Favre in week 17 to do it. You don't want to hear that, right? So.
Other questions? Other questions? Yes, sir. Johnson's what's going on.
This is a two-parter from the New York Times.
Two-parter, got you. First part.
Are you and Randy Moss still in touch?
Yes, not frequently, but I'll text him or he'll text me. And so, I'm really proud of him because I'm sure you've watched 30 for 30 and ran university, and you can see where he came from and the different things that he had to endure. But he has really grown so much. And to see him on television now and how well he's doing, I'm really proud of him. He's awesome. And, played it with the guy. I mean, it was pretty amazing to play with him. And when he wasn't open, like I said in the show, when he wasn't open, he was still open. And close your eyes and let it fly, and he'll go make a play for you. So, part 2.
Okay. Since I'm such a big Saints fan, how was your career against the Saints?
Saints. You know what? I didn't get a chance to play. With them being in the NFC, didn't get a chance to play against the Saints. I think I was hurt the 1 year that we did play. But, Drew Brees and I, we were in that same Heisman vote that year in '99, and then he came out the year after me, and I've always had a lot of respect for him. Got a chance to talk with Coach Payton at the Combine this year. I got a lot of respect for him too. Actually, my PR director at the Jets is now the PR director at the Saints. So I've got some ties down there. But I do follow them.
Question from back here.
Oh, all the way in the back. Okay. Rich Samini from the New York Daily News. Yes.
Can you describe your recruiting in the college yet? Brandon said that you went with your parents went, but the processes that you had to go through that some of these athletes you had are now entering in, how you really chose.
Sure. Absolutely. Great question. So the question was how did I choose Marshall and what that process was like? Obviously, process is much different now with coaches being able to stay in touch with you through Twitter and Facebook and all those different things. But I still think your mindset needs to be the same. And here was my mindset. I wasn't highly recruited at high school. I had 2 1AA offers, which is now called the FCS. That was to Middle Tennessee State and Tennessee Chattanooga. I wasn't an exceptional high school athlete. I was about 6'2", 175 pounds my senior year in high school. But I had a love and a passion for the game, and I really loved the mental side of the game with my dad being a coach. I was in the locker room. I was in coaches' meetings. I really loved the mental part of the game. And so the summer before my senior year, my dad had a coaching friend who had 2 players that were playing at Marshall at the time, and I was actually looking to go to a camp that had some good instruction. I just didn't want to go to Tennessee and do that dog and pony show or this. I wanted to go to a camp that I could really get better. And so they said, you know what, this is a pretty good camp, why don't you come up? And so I came up and went through the camp and apparently had a good camp, and after the camp, coach offered me a scholarship right there. That's the only reason that I even thought about Marshall, even though my dad played Division II ball at Bluefield State College in West Virginia, and then he finished up with Marshall with my mother. And so even though that was their alma mater, it really wasn't on my radar. They had just won the 1AA championship in '92. I was a senior in '95, so I had heard of them a little bit, but it really wasn't. It was between Middle Tennessee and Tennessee Chattanooga. How I made my decision was that as an athlete, I wanted to play at the highest level I could possibly play, but I wanted to play. I didn't just want to run through the T at Tennessee or run through the smoke at UK, whatever those schools are that kind of seem to be your big schools. I wanted that full student-athlete experience. I wanted to, wherever I was going to play, I wanted it to be the highest level of competition possible, but I wanted to have a chance to compete and be on the field. And that would be my advice to all of you that have aspirations of playing college athletics. Don't get caught up into the school. Really take a look at what's going to be best for you. What's going to be best for your development, not only as an athlete, but as a student and as a person. And what college or what school fits you. Because if you have aspirations of playing professionally and whatever that may be, if you can play, they're going to find you. They're going to find you. They're going to find out who you are, and they'll come get you. But you want to have that full student-athlete experience. There's nothing like it. My 4.5 years at Marshall, unbelievable. I would not trade one single day for those 4.5 years. I had the best time of my life, and I didn't even know it. The friendships that I made, the relationships, and what you will find is if you have the opportunity to play college athletics, is that will become a second home for you. You'll be able to go to that collegiate town and know people and talk to people and even find opportunities maybe in the job market or whatever. You'll build relationships there that will be forever and will be lasting the rest of your life. And so that's really important. That was really part of my decision. Was I wanted to play at the highest level possible, but also I wanted to contribute. I wanted to be on the field, and that wasn't guaranteed to me. I was 4th on the depth chart going to Marshall University, and number 3 guy transfers that summer. By the 2nd game of the year, the starter goes down, and the 3rd game of the year, the backup, who is now the starter, gets hurt. And so the 3rd game of the year, as a true freshman, I'm the starting quarterback. And then play through the whole season. We go to the 1AA championship, and we lose by 2 points. The next year, we have a coaching change. Our coach goes to Georgia. He asked me to go to Georgia with him. I told him no, I didn't feel like I was ready. I stayed, and I was redshirted. So you're talking about being a starter on a national championship type team. The next year you're getting redshirted, you're watching. And so that was another experience for me as well, but I knew I needed to go through that. And like I said before, I was 6'2", 175 pounds out of high school. By the time I left Marshall, I was 6'3", 230. And so be patient with yourself and your own development and understand that, we get so caught up in who's the next young phenom and all this and that, but, athletics has a way of bringing itself around. And so be patient with your own development and how you're growing and how you're getting better. It's not the same thing for everyone. So.
We have a question from back here to your left in the back.
My name is Wolf, and I just wanted to say first, as a parent, two student athletes, I appreciate where you're bringing to these kids to this student stuff.
Thank you.
And I was just wondering, during that time, when we got this in 07 and all that transition as you went through, what kind of leadership principles did you learn? What kind of leadership principles did you put in play as you were going through that?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Well, the first thing I learned just from, and like I said before, I learned that what I did could not be who I was. That was number one. And that football had to have its certain place in my life, which was really important, but it couldn't run my life. That was number one. Secondly, what I learned about leadership was service. Because now as the backup, I couldn't produce, but I had to stand in front of the team and say, look, Coach Mangini's made the switch to Kellen Clemens. He deserves, as our starter, your complete effort, focus, concentration, everything you got, he deserves it. And so then I had to find ways to still lead because I was a captain and serve my teammates. And that's where the service part, I was challenged with that. Because it's really easy to serve when things are going your way. When things are going the way you want them to go, yeah, it's easy to make those good decisions. But when things don't go your way, that's when people really are looking to see what you're made of and who you really are. And so that was my opportunity to say, you know what? It's not about me. It's about our team. It's about each other. And I've got to find ways to serve my teammates.
We got another question here in the back to your right.
Yeah, I echo what that gentleman said. Thank you for being here. Two things. Do you have a spiritual role model and do you have an athletic role model?
Spiritual role model and athletic role model. I would say in one person, my spiritual and athletic role model was my father. And I lost my father in 2014. He was on the heart transplant list and couldn't make it to receive a heart. And what I learned from him was the work ethic. What I learned from him was the importance of relationships. What I learned from him was how to treat people the way you wanted to be treated. And so he was my role model in every sense of the word. Since then, and even before then, mentors that I've had, I've always really cherished what Curtis Martin brought to my life. For those of you who don't know, Hall of Fame running back with the Jets, and how he lived his life and how he served as a professional. I viewed him as a mentor. Coaches, Herm Edwards, great mentor of mine. Bob Pruitt, my college coach, great mentor of mine. My high school coach, Dave Meskey. With my father being a coach, I always kind of gravitated toward the coaches and tried to learn from them. And I was always a coach pleaser, so I wanted to do what they asked me to do. But there's no doubt, and the thing about role model that I would share with all of you is that whether you want to be one or not, you are a role model. And back when I was your age, Charles Barkley was one of the big stars in the NBA. And he had this commercial, and he's like, I am not a role model. Do not watch me, do not, whatever. And that's completely false. Whether you want to be or not, you are a role model. But here's the choice that you can make. You have a choice to make. You can either be a good role model and have a really good influence, or you can be a bad role model. So the choice is not whether or not you're going to be a role model, because the person on the other side chooses that. Okay? But the choice that you have to make is, what type of influence do I want to have? What type of role model do I want to be? That's the big choice.
I'm going to bring it to a close. I appreciate your attentiveness and I appreciate your patience. I know some of you are concerned about homework. We're going to close it out tonight by doing this. If you're a student athlete, I just want you to come to the front. I just want you to take a knee and kneel at the front. If you're a parent or a coach, you can stand up around them. We're going to let Coach Cravens pray over them. But as you come and do that, here's the thing I want you to think about. You're not taking a knee for me. You're taking a knee for God, for Christ. That's who you want to be in submission to. And Chad has shared that beautifully, is what that means to keep the first thing first. And so that's what I want you to do. So just spread out along the front, anywhere along the front, take a knee, student athletes, and I'll let Coach Cravens close us out. As you're settling in, Chad, I tried to be your teammate by wearing some Marshall green,
Nice.
jet green, but here's the beautiful part about it. I'm hot, I can take this off, and I know you're my brother in Christ, and that's eternal. So that's the thing I'm most pumped up about tonight, is being your teammate. Thank you for what you shared.
Thank you. Thank
Coach
you.
Cravens, here you are.
Father, I give you thanks for this night. I thank you that you have been first and foremost in the conversations that have taken place. We want to praise you. We want to honor you for who you are, for the way that you work in our lives as athletes, as students, in chorus, in band, in arts, wherever it might be. We give you praise and honor and glory that you deserve. And Father, I thank you for the testimonies that were given tonight from Becca and Tyler and Grace. And I know that our students that are here before me could give similar testimonies, and I thank you for that. I just pray that you would always guide and direct in their lives, that they might be a Christian role model. As Chad has just said, somebody's always watching. That they might exemplify you in everything that they do. Father, I thank you for Chad and for his testimony tonight. I thank you for his witness and the professional ranks. And I just pray that you would just continue to guide and direct in his life as he ministers to former players. But I give you thanks for this school and for what it stands for. And Father, I hope that this is an example tonight of what can lead forward, that we would always be a school that is Lexington Christian and stands for those values. And as these students kneel here, I just pray that you just be with them. Father, just guide and direct in their lives. And everything that they do and everything that they say, just keep them close to you always. And again, I just thank you for this night. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.